I've been waiting for this subject to come up. I may do things a little differently. If I spend 40 minutes going over the CSP, I typically spend 30 minutes on the close. And I'm very structured in my close. So when I'm setting up the call to go over the CSP and they have a partner or they have a spouse that also needs to see this, I don't set the appointment until I have them both on the phone at the same time. When you go into the close, when it's blank at the bottom, the first thing I show them is a full pay. I don't talk to them about putting $500 down or whatever the case may be, and I show it to them. I reiterate that we don't charge any fees, success fees. They only pay for the consulting. As you can see, it's $99 per consulting call. How would you like to pay for that? Wait for an objection. And this takes a half an hour process. So if you're rushing the close, you have to solidify their objection, right? The easiest way to do that is to repeat it back to them. And you have to understand what the true objection is. Then you rebuild value, right? And you ask a different closing question. And eventually it's going to be about the money. And that's when I get into how much they can afford to put down today. So a typical close for me may go full pay, $2,000, $1,500, and it may end up at $500. But I never want to get off a phone call without a true objection. Like, for example, my wife couldn't make the call today, but let's go over the CSP anyway. Other than that, I don't even do it. So my goal is to close every time, the first time I go over the custom strategic plan. So if they're not going to close, in most cases, I'll move on. But it takes a while to go through that process. And you just have to follow the closing structure and just do the same thing every time. But if anybody ever wants to have a phone call for me and I can present my close to you, I would be more than willing to do it.
That'd be fantastic.
It's extremely structured. And there has to be a fluent transition from, this is the bio, this is, I go into who their team is, and then directly into, at the bottom of your custom strategic plan, this is the pricing, how do you want to pay for it? And they're going to start objecting. And it's very important that you solidify the objection, rebuild value, ask a different closing question. And another thing that's extremely important is you don't want them to have buyer's remorse, because most of my closes are on the second call, right? On the first CSP. So you have to tie them down and wrap them up. You have to explain to them in great detail, which usually takes 5 or 10 minutes, exactly what the next step in the process is going to be. So I never put the opportunity for them to enroll outside of the phone call that I'm currently on, where I don't have time to do this today. I'll make the payment tonight or whatever the case may be. I make sure when I set the appointment that they have an hour and a half to spend with me, and, tell them every single thing that's going to happen afterwards. So, I just sent you the DocuSign agreement. Let's go through that together, execute the agreement. Once the agreement's been executed, okay, now you're going to receive a secondary email where you're going to put in your payment information. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Which card would you like to put that on? And you just have to have structure. Okay, now the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a call from Pat Mickelson in regards to your finance agreement with Monterey. He's going to read you some recorded verbiage from Monterey. He's going to send, because I got caught up on a few deals where they enrolled and then they didn't sign the DocuSign agreement with Monterey. So it's very important that they understand on that call that they need to execute the Monterey agreement right after they get off the phone with Nicholson. Then they're going to receive a phone call from their consulting team or their personal assistants and set up those calls and get right into it. So Now they're looking forward to something instead of having buyer's remorse once they get off the call. Because the goal is to do a bust document on one call, close the CSP on the second call.
I've got a question, Tom. You said something really interesting. I'd love for you to evaluate a little bit more. So you talked about you going to the close and you're fishing for objections, which we all know you eliminate all those. There's no reason to say no anymore, right? So you say you look for that first objection, you handle that, you establish value, and then you reposition the ask again. Can you give us an example of how you do that or what you say? Specific example.
It's basically saying the same thing with different words. I understand what you're saying. So let's say, the first time I may ask, how would you like to pay for this? Right. Or I may, now that we're, then I've dropped them to 2,000 down, then I may utilize, after rebuilding the value, I may say something like, let's go ahead and get you enrolled. Talk about the interest rate and how Monterey does the different tiers to not pay extreme example to that particular interest rate because that may not be theirs. And then after the first round of funding, they could always take the balance that's left on their loan with Monterey and they could pay it off at a 0% interest business credit card and they could pay that at their leisure. And that would literally be another way for me to ask them for the money. So I get more creative as the conversation goes on, if that makes any sense.
It does.